Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're based. My name is Henrik Rexed, and welcome to the Open Source Journal. So today we're going to share some news. So the Open Source Journal is here to share some news about the open source community and share some open observability framework that has recently appeared in the market. So let's jump into directly to the latest news of the market. So first, the first news that we have is we're going to talk about it in more details. There is a CNCF observability survey that came up on the market, so I think it deserves to be discussed, and we're going to spend a few minutes talking about this open source report. Second, there is another great solution that has been released. It's not new, but I would like to share it with you. It's called Resoto. So Resoto is a pretty interesting solution. So it indexes resources, capture dependencies, maps the infrastructure to an intuitive graphs. So the graph will contain some metrics for each of your resources. So I think it's a great framework, and it deserves to be tested. So I think in the at least is it observable? I think I will try to look at it in more details. The second solution I would like to share today is also another platform called Elementary Data. Elementary Data, for those who never heard about it, it's basically a solution that will help you to monitor your data warehouse in few minutes, where you will see data anomalies, data lineage, operations in monitoring, and you will get some Slack alerts. It's a bit like the open source version of one of the solution that is there in the market called Monte Carlo. So the French way of doing it. But so I think it deserves to be to look at it because it brings a lot of value if you have to observe in more details your data warehouses. Second, other project that brings a lot of interest, and you may have probably heard about it a lot. It's a very well-known sub-project called Thanos. It's there since several years now. And the main idea for those who never heard about Thanos, Thanos is been designed to help you to scale Prometheus. So if you have lots of Prometheus and you know that Prometheus doesn't scale, then Thanos will obviously be helpful because you will be able to connect several Prometheus server and have a global view of what happens on your environment. So Thanos, check it out. A really interesting project, and it deserves to jump into details to how to get started and how to utilize it properly. Other solution that is also very interesting, it's called Periskop. So the SoundCloud team who took the initial Borg project to create the Prometheus project has again provided a new solution called Periskop. So Periskop is an exception monitoring service. So if you're designing microservices architecture where you want to keep track on all the various exceptions going on your solution, then Periskop will be a very interesting solution as well. So we should keep that solution in our radar as well. Other solution that I would like to share, and it's more on the eBPF side. So eBPF is now a technology that everyone is talking about it, especially in the observability space. There is a lot of a solution that relies on eBPF technology. eBPF could be very difficult and very hard to get started. So it's a great news to have solution that will help us to take advantage of the solution in an easy way. So there's plenty of solution out there like Cillium. Cillium, as you may know, they provide solution to manage your network and the security in your cluster based on eBPF technology. And they recently started an alpha version and beta version on their service mesh. So they want to provide a service mesh solution that won't utilize any sidecar proxy. So that sounds very promising for us if you want to avoid adding extra containers to our workload. Otherwise, there is also a Pixel from New Relic that has also utilizing eBPF. That also is really interesting, and we should also keep this solution in our radar as well. Otherwise, I don't know if you heard about it, but there is a Bumblebee still in the eBPF space. And Bumblebee is a solution that is a framework that will make our life easier if we want to utilize eBPF in our solutions. Well, how does it work? Yeah. So if you are familiar with Docker, where you can package your application into containers and just start it in your environment, then basically Bumblebee is the same logic. You basically build eBPF solution similar to containers and run it through their CLI. So same thing. I think it deserves to be to look at it in more details, because at the end it sounds very promising for us if we want to extend again observability utilizing eBPF. So that's for today's news. And for that, we mentioned the CNCF report. And I think it makes sense that we spend a few minutes talking about it. And for this, I have my colleagues, Michael, and I would like to discuss this with Michael right away. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hello, Henrik. Greetings from Galway, Ireland. I hope we have a very interesting discussion today on this wonderful cloud native computing foundation, microservice, as they call it themselves.
So, first of all, here is the link to the report. So, if you want to look at it and read it in details, check it out. And there's been a blog, by the way, that has been released showing a few numbers, and I think the numbers are quite interesting. So, Michael, did you have the chance to read that blog?
Not only the blog, but also the full report, indeed. And interestingly, if you look at it, the top things that people point out are not so much in terms of, oh, these and these features are missing or whatever. It's really very much focusing on, oh, wow, it's really hard to get that up and running. There is, it's very complex to understand, the lack of supporting documentation, the top two ones. And the third one already, top three, is a concern around governance. Essentially is what's the health of the underlying open source project. And that is indeed something that I also see quite often in our customer base. This is this reinsurance that CNCF specifically gives you. Of course, CNCF is not the only organization, but there are many ways out there how if you have an open source project, no matter if you're an individual or a company, that you can use to really reinsure your users and your customers. Yes, this will be sticking around for good, and there are defined ways if one of the main sponsors goes out of business or is not interested in anymore, whatever, how these things can continue. And that's it's not super surprising, but it is interesting to see that the top three or so are not technical ones, right? It's more like organizational ones, policy, governance, and how to actually use it.
Well, from the report, what I was really interested, I mean, from my end at least, because I wanted to see what were the most popular solution implemented within the community, and of course, without any surprises, Prometheus was clearly the one that comes out, because everyone talks about Prometheus now these days, so it makes sense. But then the open telemetry is at 49%, and that's quite positive, I think, because open telemetry is pretty stable on the tracing side. Metric is coming up, and soon logs. I think I may expect that once we have the full picture of open telemetry, this number will clearly increase in the future. At least that's my expectations.
Yes, and that's again something that I hear very often. I get asked by customers, and I understand the uncertainty and worry about why can't we have everything at the same time. The short answer is, well, if we all help together, if we all pitch in, then we can have things earlier. But the fact is that the open telemetry community, for good reasons, decided to do one signal type after the other. So rather than trying to boil the ocean and trying to get all the signal types somewhere, they said, all right, first we do traces, then we do metrics, and then we do logs, which is, to be honest, a little weird, because in terms of the adoption, like, everyone is using logs, a lot of folks are using metrics, and not that many are using traces so far. So it's a little bit exactly upside down to what is adopted in the wild. But at least it's a predictable thing, right? It's clear that the open telemetry community wants they have stabilized a signal type, that they move on to the next one, complete that, move on to the next one. And it doesn't stop with logs, I hope, right? There is an OTAP there, OTAP 139, I believe, that is around continuous profile or profile support, which means, you know, this old myth that there are only three pillars of observability is hopefully proven wrong with you know, OpenTelemetry going further, adopting more signals, and hopefully once we have logs sorted by end of this year, beginning of next year, then its profiles are going on. So it doesn't surprise me that OpenTelemetry specifically is so popular and has such widespread support.
And I think out of what you mentioned, I think it makes sense as well to also add an observability layer in top of our own observability solutions. What about that is, especially if we covering logs, I may be interested to see how is my log stream pipeline. Do I ingest as many logs as expected or not? Do I consume too much memory? Those
Right.
type of things will obviously be very important in the future for the
Absolutely.
operators once they implement it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the one thing is one of the topics that have been covered through the report was the challenges.
Yeah.
So could you walk through those challenges and share a bit more with us on this?
Yeah. And again, it doesn't surprise me at all, but it is, again, if we're coming to, like, as engineers, right, we're coming to that with a, you know, oh, what feature is missing, right? What is the killer feature that XYZ is successful? Turns out that's not really what end users really worry about mostly, right? It's really, of course, we all want to have all the features yesterday, ideally, but really, if you think about adoption, and you know, half of the people participating in that mini survey said that engineers and teams using multiple tools, that's the biggest challenge there, right? And that doesn't surprise me at all. And followed by 40% shortage of skills, right? So it indicates that you know, although we have been doing, you know, monitoring and APM, etc., application performance monitoring, and so on, for quite a while, these open source fueled, you know, tooling and standards, open telemetry, open metrics, etc. Many of them coming from or being hosted in CNCF, definitely introduced a new dynamic to the field, right? Where earlier on it was probably more like, well, I'm gonna pick this one vendor and I'm gonna, you know, get everything from that one vendor. Now it's more about, well, I really need to see where's my place in the ecosystem, in the overall community, right? I'm not just someone who goes there and takes something, but I need to find my place there. And if I want to attract talent that people want to work in my environment, then I also need to give them opportunity to, if they want to, contribute to open source, or, you know, being part of the community in whatever way they choose. Right? So
Well,
that's, to me at least, the interpretation of these top 3-4.
yeah, I think there was the challenge is the skills and the complexity, and I think you
Yep.
mentioned there is so many projects out there, and for someone who is not actively being part of the community and
Mm,
following the community on daily basis, it's very hard to keep track on this. So I think
absolutely.
here by building tutorials and by building getting starting guides, I think we will help the community to cover at least that
Absolutely.
challenge.
Absolutely. If you look further in that survey, you also see, you know, things like mastering new technologies, integrations, all these concerns, lack of expertise in this domain, and it ties into this observation that we are in this, not observability per se, but this new type of open source, open standard fueled observability in a relatively early stage, meaning that we need a lot of folks that really contribute on all levels. You know, I don't care if you go out and do a TikTok on it, or write a book or an article or whatever, sharing your experiences with whatever tool, whatever specification it is, helps others, and you know, can either make someone adopt something or decide against something, but at least they have some more data points to decide in one way or the other. So this is really the time where everyone out there has a huge opportunity to just start contributing, pick whatever. There are so many different projects out there. Pick whatever you like, start contributing, start sharing. And just as a reminder, when people say start contributing, it's really not about the code, right? Yes, of course, without the code, I think when Sir said that about the internet, of course, it's about the running code. But there are specifically, if you look at all these the top ranking answers there, those are things that have nothing to do with code, right? This is about tutorials, about documentation, about content, teaching people, educating, talking about pros and cons, about costs, and talking about, how do I actually use that, for what do I use it, and what way do I use it?
And speaking of this, I think it's the right time to share some few books and blogs that has happened recently. So if you're looking for resolving that pain, we have few assets to share today. So starting with a great initiative that has been done by Alex Bowden
Yes.
from Lightstep. So he has published a cloud native observability with open telemetry. So I think it makes sense that you pay attention. So if you want to learn more, check out the URL here, cloudnativeobservability.com, where you will have the ability to take advantage of that book. A second blog that comes out, of course, is consuming spanner metrics with open telemetry. So it's a blog available in Google Cloud blog section, and it will basically help you to see how you can consume the spanner metrics from Google Cloud with open telemetry. So it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of a steps by step guide. So if you want to implement it onto in your environment, you will have that options with the information shared in that blog post. Otherwise, if you're a Prometheus user, there's histograms. Instagrams could be sometimes a big question mark. So there's a nice blog that has been released recently. So Prometheus histogram run that passed me again. So it will explain you what is histograms in a just a statistics approach, and then explain the stuff related to Prometheus. Really good blog. So you should definitely read it as a recommendation. And last, I would like to share also another blog that makes sense. It's the single pane of glass is a myth. So a really interesting blog post as well. So we will try to share more blog posts like this. Michael has his own website with all the news, and we will try to keep and share a few news come from that from Michael's blog to give you some insights and help you to deliver your project. Before we closing, last thing I would like to remind that there are a couple of conferences that will come soon, and there's still the CFP open. So if you want to be part of the Holy Fest, the CFP ends in the 1st of May. So you could, if you want to be part of that conference, check it out the Holy Fest website. There are a couple of cloud native days in Switzerland, the Global Azure in Austria, also, where there's still time to submit your paper. SLO Conf, obviously, it's ended, but it will come soon. So if you want to learn more about SRE and SLO, this is a great conference. I will definitely recommend. And Conf 42. Which is very good conference as well. The CFP ends in May the 6th. So if you want to be part of this conference, don't forget to submit your presentation. All right, so that's it for today's news. It's the first episode. Again, if you want to, we want to improve ourselves, so don't hesitate to send us our feedback. If there are things you want to adjust and have more news about all the project, let us know. We will be there to improve ourselves in the future. Thanks, Michael, for your time today, and see you soon for another open source news.
Sounds good. See you, Red.